The inheritance, the old man and his trophy wife were dead, killed in a freak accident that left me with a multi-million-dollar estate and two stepsisters I wasn't even related to by blood. One was a fiery temptress with a temper to match, the other a frost queen with a sharp tongue. Both of them were ready to claw my eyes out for a piece of the pie. But here was the kicker. According to the lawyer, the three of us had to live under the same roof for a full year before we could touch a dime of the money. On our very first day of cohabitation, the fiery one walked right into my bathroom. The steam was thick, turning the frosted glass door into a blurry, opaque canvas. Hot water hammered down from the shower head, rinsing away the cheap suds of drugstore body wash and the exhaustion of a life I was ready to leave behind. My name is Caleb Stone. I'm 24, and for the last 3 years, I've been a bottom feeder in the gig economy. I delivered for Uber Eats, lived in a cramped studio apartment overlooking a dumpster, and my biggest aspiration was either winning the Powerball or having a lonely heiress take pity on me. Yesterday, the dream came true in the most twisted way possible. My old man, Arthur Stone, a guy I hadn't spoken to in a decade, a man who abandoned my mother to build a corporate empire, had driven his car off a cliff in the Swiss Alps. He and his gorgeous young wife, Clara, were gone in an instant. As his only biological son, I was the primary heir. The lawyer's call had been cold and professional, but to me, it sounded like a choir of angels. I practically floated back to this mansion, a place I hadn't stepped foot in for years. It was the wedding gift Arthur had bought for Clara, obscene in its scale and chilling in its emptiness. Now, I was humming a tune, enjoying the first shower I'd ever had in a bathroom larger than 5 square feet. The roar of the water drowned out the world. Then, through the rhythmic splashing, I heard a faint click. The sound of a lock turning. My heart skipped a beat. I shut the water off instantly. The bathroom fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the drip, drip, drip of water falling from my hair onto the marble tile. I held my breath, my pulse thudding in my ears. There was someone else in the house besides me. A burglar? No. What thief walks into a bathroom while the shower is running? My eyes locked onto the frosted glass door. As the steam began to settle, a tall, slender silhouette appeared on the other side. The curves were unmistakable, an hourglass figure that would make any man's blood pressure spike. She didn't move. She just stood there. We were separated by nothing but an inch of glass. The air felt like it had turned to lead. Every second stretched into an eternity. My throat tightened and my muscles coiled, not out of fear, but from a raw, primal jolt of adrenaline and curiosity. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice coming out raspy and low. The shadow flinched, startled by my voice. Then, the handle turned. The door creaked open just a crack. The humid, soapy air rushed out, replaced by a draft of cool, dry hallway air. A hand with perfectly manicured, red nails gripped the edge of the doorframe. Then, a stunning face peeked through the gap. She had cascading waves of auburn hair and a pair of captivating eyes that tilted upward at the corners, giving her a natural, sultry look. Beneath her straight nose, her full lips were parted in sheer shock. Her gaze traveled from my dripping hair, down my neck, across my collarbone, and continued south. I instinctively grabbed a towel to cover myself. The movement seemed to snap her out of it. Her cheeks turned a deep, burning crimson that spread down to her neck. What are you doing in here?" she stammered. Her voice was panicked, but it quickly sharpened into an indignant flare of anger. I smirked, forcing my heart to slow down as I leaned into my usual don't give a damn persona. "Look, lady, this is my house. Taking a shower in my own bathroom isn't exactly a crime, is it?" This was Serena, the eldest of the twin baggage my stepmother had brought into the marriage. I'd seen her in photos, but the pictures didn't do her justice. She was 10 times more electric in person. She was wearing a silk slip dress that clung to every curve, the thin fabric leaving very little to the imagination. Serena's eyes narrowed into daggers. She glared at me like she wanted to dissect me on the spot. "Your house. Get straight, Caleb. This house belonged to my mother." "Well, your mother is currently having a reunion with my dad in the great beyond," I said, my voice dripping with intentional provocation. "Legally speaking, this is an estate, and I'm a primary beneficiary." "You." Serena's chest heaved with rage, the thin straps of her dress looking like they were under a fair amount of tension. She looked ready to scream, but seeing me standing there half-naked, she choked back the insults, her face flushing even darker. It was actually pretty entertaining to watch her struggle between fury and embarrassment. "Like what you see?" I asked, puffing out my chest. I didn't have much in the way of gym rat muscle, but I wasn't about to lose the alpha contest. "Pervert." Serena spat. She looked like a cat that had just had its tail stepped on. She reached for the handle to slam the door, but a cold, calm voice stopped her from behind. Serena, what's going on? A girl who looked identical to Serena, but possessed a completely opposite aura walked into view. Long, straight black hair, porcelain skin, and eyes that were calm and bottomless like a still lake. She was wearing plain cotton pajamas and radiated a don't touch me vibe. This was a younger twin, Sloane. Sloane's gaze moved from her fuming sister to me, looking through the crack in the door. Her expression didn't change at all. She looked at me with the same clinical detachment one might use to examine a piece of furniture. Honestly, being ignored felt worse than being yelled at by Serena. Done staring yet? Because I can do a slow 360 if you want a better look. Professional rates apply, I quipped. Serena stomped her foot and slammed the door with a resounding bang. Freak, she hissed from the hallway. I could practically feel her blood boiling through the wood, and it made my mood significantly better. As their footsteps faded away, I leaned back against the cold tile and let out a long breath. My heart was still racing. That glimpse of Serena, the mix of shock and fury, that body, it was burned into my brain. $1 billion estate and a pair of gorgeous stepsisters. This messed up life of mine was suddenly getting very interesting. The next morning at 10, we were on the top floor of the Stone building at a high-end law firm. I put on my only respectable outfit, a charcoal blazer I'd bought for a college interview years ago that had seen better days. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and immediately spotted the sisters on the leather sofa. Serena was in a fire engine red bodycon dress, legs crossed, looking at me with pure, unadulterated hostility. Sloane was sitting quietly, reading a book, acting as if the rest of the world didn't exist. She sensed my gaze, looked up for a fraction of a second, and then went back to her page. I strolled over and flopped into the armchair opposite them, kicking my feet up and making sure they saw my polished, but clearly knock-off, dress shoes. Morning, sisters, I said with a grin. Serena scoffed and turned her head away. Sloane didn't even acknowledge I'd spoken. I didn't care. We had plenty of time to get to know each other. A man in his 50s wearing gold-rimmed glasses walked in. This was Marcus Lewis, my father's longtime attorney. Mr. Stone, Miss Serena, Miss Sloane, everyone is here, Marcus said, gesturing for us to take seats at the conference table. Time is money, so let's get straight to it. He opened a thick file and began reading the will that would decide our futures. The first half was all legal jargon, shares in the holding company, offshore accounts, real estate, art collections. My head was spinning as he listed numbers followed by a dizzying string of zeros. My heart hammered harder with every million mentioned. I was set. I was finally truly set. Serena and Sloane looked shaken too. They grew up with money, but hearing the total sum out loud was clearly a shock. The aforementioned asset shall be inherited jointly by my son, Caleb Stone, and the daughters of my wife Clara, Serena and Sloane Stone. Serena's brow furrowed. Jointly? What does that mean? My stomach dropped. Jointly? Was it just mine? Why was the old man being so generous with them? Marcus pushed his glasses up his nose and continued reading. The terms of inheritance are as follows. The three heirs must reside together at the estate located at 88 Lakeview Drive for a period of exactly 1 year. During this time, no heir may move out without cause. No individual may be away from the residence for more than 72 consecutive hours. Any violation of these terms results in an automatic forfeiture of that heir's share, which will then be divided equally among the remaining compliant parties. The rules of engagement, what? I was the first one to jump up. Live together? For a whole year? You gotta be kidding me. Serena stood up too, her face pale with disbelief. This is impossible. There is no way I'm living in the same house as him. She pointed a trembling finger at me. Only Sloane remained still, though the way her fingers gripped the edge of her book until her knuckles turned white told me she was just as rattled. Marcus Lewis seemed to have anticipated this. He adjusted his glasses and added calmly. This was a mutual will signed by both Arthur and Clara Stone. It is legally binding. If all three of you complete the year without incident, the estate will be divided. Caleb receives 50%. Serena and Sloane receive 25% each. 50% for me, 50 for them. I did the math. Half a mountain of gold was still a mountain of gold. Besides, if one of them couldn't take it and moved out, my share went up. If they both left, I had to stop myself from drooling at the thought. Furthermore, Marcus dropped the real bombshell. For the duration of this year, all of your personal bank accounts will be frozen. A joint living fund of $1 million in cash has been deposited at the estate for your collective expenses. Any major expenditure requires the signatures of all three heirs. Frozen? I was stunned. I only had about $400 in my account anyway, so that didn't matter, but it meant I was sitting on a fortune I couldn't touch. The old man was trolling me from the grave. Serena looked even worse. She was dressed in designer labels from head to toe. Cutting off her credit cards was probably worse than a death sentence to her. The reading is concluded. If there are no objections, the terms take effect immediately. Here are the keys and the security fobs. Marcus pushed 3 sets of keys toward us. The room was deathly quiet. We looked at each other, a triangle of suspicion, loathing, and cold calculation. For the sake of the money, we were shackled together. The war for the stone inheritance had officially begun. The conflict turned hot the very first day. The trigger? Room assignments. The mansion had 3 floors, a garden, and a pool. The second floor had 4 bedrooms. The master suite was massive, with a walk-in closet and a spa-like bathroom. As the majority shareholder, I figured it was mine. I'm calling it, I said, kicking open the master bedroom door and spreading my arms. This is my kingdom. Before the words were out of my mouth, a suitcase flew out of the room, nearly taking my toes off. Serena was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, smirking. Sorry, loser. My sister and I moved in yesterday. This one's mine. Yours. I looked her up and down. You've got a 25% stake. Why do you get the master? You should be in the maid's quarters. Possession is 9/10 of the law, she shot back. First come, first served. That's illegal squatting. I'll call the cops. Go ahead. See who they believe. She wasn't backing down. We stood there like 2 prize fighters trading insults. Serena, Sloane called out, walking down the hall with her own suitcase. Her voice wasn't loud, but it shut us both up. Stop it. The guest suite next door is just as big. I'm taking that one. Without a glance at either of us, she walked into the adjacent room and shut the door. Serena gave me one last glare and slammed her door too. Great. I was stuck with the smallest guest room at the end of the hall. Once I settled in, the next problem arose, dinner. I was used to takeout or a bowl of ramen. But with my accounts frozen, I had to be careful with the cash I had on me. I wandered into the kitchen to see what was available. The fridge was stocked with imported stuff I couldn't pronounce and expensive bottled water. Just as I was about to grab some eggs to make a mess of fried rice, Serena walked in wearing an apron. What are you doing? She asked suspiciously. Cooking. What does it look like? I held up the eggs. You can cook. She looked skeptical. I can make a mean omelet. Does that count? Serena rolled her eyes and snatched the eggs from me. Don't waste food. I'll cook today. We'll rotate after that. I didn't mind a break. I sat in the dining room and waited. Half an hour later, she brought out 3 dishes, tomato and egg stir-fry, sautéed greens, and a plate of honey-glazed chicken wings. It actually smelled amazing. I picked up my fork, but Serena swiped at my hand. What now? I snapped. Go tell Sloane it's time to eat, she commanded. I grumbled, but went upstairs. I knocked for a while before Sloane cracked the door. Dinner's ready, I said. I'm not hungry, she said coldly, trying to close the door. Hey, come on. Your sister worked hard on this. You're not even going to try it. I put my hand on the door. Sloane looked up at me, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. I don't want to eat with you too. You leave her alone, Serena called from downstairs. She'll eat when she's hungry. The meal was awkward and silent. Serena didn't seem to have much of an appetite either. So, she said suddenly, how did you, live? Before this? How? I worked, I got paid, I ate, I slept. Pretty standard, I said. Your dad, Arthur, he never sent you anything. I let out a sharp, dry laugh. He probably forgot I existed. After my mom died, he cut me a check and told me not to bother him. I spent the last of that graduating college. Serena didn't say anything else, but her expression softened just a tiny bit. After dinner, she cleaned up while I hogged the TV remote. We almost got into a physical fight over a football game versus a reality show until Sloane came downstairs and silently unplugged the TV. Peace at last. The days blurred into a cycle of bickering and standoffs. We were like 3 porcupines in a cage, constantly pricking each other but forced to stay close. I realized Serena was mostly bark and no bite. She'd spend all afternoon doing her nails or a face mask, but she'd also spend hours making incredible meals. She called me a pervert and a loser to my face, but when I caught a cold, I found medicine and hot tea left outside my door. Sloane was a ghost. She spent most of her time in her room reading or painting. I caught a glimpse of her work once, a deep, haunting starry sky. She rarely spoke, but she kept the garden immaculate and would quietly clean up the living room after Serena and I made a mess of it. And then there was me, the disruptor. I'd leave my socks on the couch, blast the volume on the TV when they were watching their shows, and make fun of Serena's vampire lipstick. I enjoyed seeing them get riled up. It was the only fun I had in my otherwise bleak life. But the peace didn't last. One afternoon, I was out in the garden pulling weeds. a chore Sloan had assigned me under the threat of no dinner. The doorbell rang. I figured it was a package and went to answer it, grumbling. A middle-aged man stood there. He was wearing an expensive suit that didn't hide his oily complexion and a gold watch that was way too big for his wrist. "Who are you? Who are you looking for?" I asked. The man looked at me with pure disgust, like I was something he'd stepped in. "Are Serena and Sloan here? I'm their father." I froze. This was Brad Whitaker, the sister's biological father and my stepmother's ex-husband. "They're busy," I said, trying to shut the door. Micah told me this guy was bad news. "Who do you think you are, kid?" Brad shoved past me and marched into the foyer. "Serena. Sloan. Daddy's here." His voice brought the girls running. When they saw him, Serena turned white as a sheet, and Sloan instinctively stepped back, hiding behind her sister. Their reaction told me everything I needed to know. "What are you doing here?" Serena's voice was shaking, but she stood her ground. "I came to see my girls," Brad said with a greasy smile. His eyes were already roaming the mansion, filled with naked greed. "Nice place. Your mother really left you a gold mine, didn't she?" Blood and water, he reached out to touch Serena's face, but she flinched away with a look of pure loathing. "Brad, I'm warning you. Leave, or I'm calling the police," Serena snapped. "The police?" Brad chuckled. "I'm your father. It's not a crime to visit my daughters. And Serena, watch your tone. Sloan, honey, don't hide. Daddy won't bite." He turned his gaze towards Sloan. She visibly shivered, her face draining of color. I'd seen enough. "Hey, old man," I said, stepping between the girls and Brad. "They said they don't want you here. You having trouble with English? Get lost." Brad finally looked at me, squinting. "And who the hell are you?" "I'm the man of the house," I said, squaring my shoulders. Brad laughed. "You? In that thrift store blazer? Give me a break." "Look, kid, stay out of family business." "I'm making it my business," I said, flashing a grin. "First, this house belongs to the Stones now. My name is Caleb Stone. Second, these two are under my protection. Third, if you aren't out of my sight in 3 seconds, I'm going to show you what an unpleasant exit looks like." I wasn't shouting, but I wasn't joking either. Maybe it was the sheer audacity of a broke kid talking to him like that, but Brad actually hesitated. "Fine, you'll regret this, kid." Brad spat, throwing a hollow threat over his shoulder as he retreated out the door. Once he was gone, the tension in the room snapped. Serena leaned against the wall, looking like she was about to collapse. Sloan stepped out from behind her and whispered, "Thank you." It was the first time she'd ever initiated a conversation with me. "No big deal," I said, heading back to the couch. "But I have a feeling he's not going to make it easy for us." I was right. Brad became a recurring nightmare. Some nights he'd show up drunk, screaming at the gate about how Clara was a cheat and Arthur was a thief. Other times he'd play the loving father, bringing cheap gifts and trying to convince the girls that he deserved a cut of the inheritance. Serena would go out and scream back at him until he left, but every time she came back inside, she'd lock herself in her room for hours. She used anger to mask her terror. Sloan just became more withdrawn. Her paintings grew darker, the stars in her skies replaced by black voids. One day, Brad showed up with 2 thugs in tow. They blocked the driveway, shouting that they were going to trash the place if they didn't get their share. The neighbors were starting to peek out their windows. Serena was shaking, her thumb hovering over the 911 button. "Don't," I said, stopping her. "Cops will take him away, and he'll be back in 48 hours. We need a permanent fix." "Then what do we do? Just let him harass us." Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Stay inside," I told her. I walked out alone. "Well, look who it is." "The boy toy," Brad sneered. "You ready to pay up for your sisters yet?" I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Brad Whitaker, right?" I said calmly. "Let's talk law. What you're doing is called harassment and attempted extortion. You've got 2 witnesses with you, and I've got this on record. You want to see how long you last in a cell?" Brad sneered. "I'm asking for child support. It's my right." "Is it?" I smiled. "Let's talk about something else then, like how you lost custody because of your gambling debts and the domestic abuse charges. Or how about the fact that you owe about 50 grand to a guy named Big Sal over in the West Side? I hear Sal has been looking for you." I'd spent the last few days and some of that living fun cash contacting an old buddy of mine from my delivery days who knew the local underbelly. Brad's face went pale. How do you know that?" "Word gets around," I said, waving the phone. "I have every word you just said on here. If I accidentally send this recording and your current location to Big Sal, how do you think he'll thank me?" Brad's bravado vanished. He looked at me with genuine fear. "What do you want?" "I want you and your friends to vanish. From this house and from their lives. Forever. Because if I see your face again, I promise you won't be standing the next time we talk." My voice was a whisper, but it hit him like a hammer. Brad stumbled back, looked at me like I was a demon, and scrambled into his car with his two goons. I watched them peel out of the neighborhood. When I turned around, Serena and Sloane were standing in the doorway. Their eyes were wet. Serena's look was a mix of shock and something else I couldn't quite place. Sloane's eyes were clear, the icy surface finally breaking. "What?" I asked, feeling awkward. "Never seen a handsome guy before? I told you, I've got your back." That night, Sloane did something unheard of. She cooked a massive feast. For the first time, we sat together like a real family. No one mentioned Brad. Serena gave me the biggest piece of chicken and muttered, "Thanks. For today. Don't mention it," I said, mouth full. "Just consider it part of my protection fee." "I'm expensive." Serena rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Sloane even asked, "Was that Big Sal guy real?" "Half real," I shrugged. "Mostly a bluff. But a guy like Brad always has someone he's scared of. You just have to find out who." We sat at that table for 2 hours. Afterward, Serena didn't fight me for the remote, and Sloane stayed downstairs. We actually watched a movie together. After that night, the house changed. The fight stopped. We started going to the grocery store together. Serena picked the snacks, Sloane picked the healthy stuff, and I pushed the cart. We'd clean the house as a team. We even started playing poker on weekends. The loser had to get their face drawn on with markers. Looking in the mirror at my marker-covered face while the girls laughed until they couldn't breathe, I realized I wasn't even mad. I was getting used to Serena's morning wake-up calls and Sloane's quiet breakfasts. The mansion didn't feel so empty anymore. The final gift, the money, started to feel less important. My relationship with Serena grew. Complicated. She'd find excuses to have me fix her laptop while she lounged around in silk pajamas. She'd lean over my shoulder while I played video games, her scent filling my senses. Every time she got close, my heart did a frantic dance. But I never made a move. Because of Sloane. Sloane had changed too. She wasn't cold anymore. She was quiet, but in a way that felt supportive. She'd bring me tea when I was reading. She'd find things I'd lost before I even knew they were missing. She was like a deep, calm well that I found myself wanting to dive into. I was stuck between fire and ice, and honestly, I was enjoying every second of the struggle. The year was almost up. None of us had left. Marcus Lewis called to tell us to come in on Monday to finalize the transfer of the estate. When I hung up, the house went silent. The experiment was over. We'd get the money, and then we'd go our separate ways. I should have been thrilled, but I felt a hollow ache in my chest. "So," Serena said, breaking the silence, "what are you guys going to do once the money hits?" Me? I rubbed the back of my neck. Buy a bigger place, a nice car, and spend the rest of my life doing absolutely nothing, probably. I was lying. Serena saw right through it. "Pathetic," she teased. Then she got quiet. "I think I'm going to open a dance studio." "That's cool," I said. I knew that had been her dream. We both looked at Sloane. "I want to go to grad school," Sloane whispered. "Fine arts. Maybe in Europe." "So, what happens to the house?" Serena asked the question we were all avoiding. "Sell it. Split the cash and never see each other again." The thought of going back to being a stranger to them hurt. "Maybe we don't sell it?" I blurted out. They both looked at me. I stammered. "It's a big house. It could be a home base. Somewhere we can always come back to." Serena's eyes welled up. Sloane looked away, her shoulders trembling. That weekend, we didn't talk about the money. We cleaned, we cooked, and we watched one last movie, the air thick with a bittersweet sadness. On Monday, we went back to the law firm. We signed the papers, the wire transfers were initiated, and the Stone Empire was officially ours. Marcus Lewis shook our hands. "Congratulations. Your parents will be proud to see you all like this." We looked at each other, feeling more somber than rich. "Oh, one more thing," Marcus said, pulling a sealed envelope from his desk. "Clara Stone asked me to give this to you only after the inheritance was finalized. She called it her final gift." Serena took the envelope. Her hand was shaking as she tore it open. Inside was a letter on cream-colored stationery, written in Clara's elegant script. "My dear Serena, Sloane, and Caleb, if you are reading this, Arthur and I are gone. Please do not mourn us. We live the lives we chose. Serena, Sloane, I am so sorry I couldn't give you a perfect family, and that I couldn't shield you from the shadows of your biological father. He was my greatest mistake, and while I removed him from your lives, I knew I couldn't remove the fear he left in your hearts. Caleb, I know you resent your father, and perhaps you resent me too, but Arthur loved you in his own flawed, distant way. He pushed you away because he was afraid the sharks in his world would tear you apart. He wasn't a man of words, but he left you everything he had. I created that cruel will for a reason. I knew Brad would come for you once I was gone. Serena is too reactive, and Sloane is too fragile to face him alone. But Caleb, Even though we didn't spend much time together, I saw the man you were in your father's stories and your photos. You're like a porcupine, prickly on the outside, but with a heart of gold. I knew if I forced you together, you would protect them. I knew that after a year, you wouldn't be enemies, but a family. That is my true gift to you. Not the money, but each other. A home.